The thing that is most interesting and striking about this exhibition is actually the use of the word radical. I can't help but feel the Latin roots there. Literally, it means roots. The rootedness of the word radix. We're talking about a place that is rooted in memory, rooted in culture, but we often use radical now as something that means more progressive or even transgressive. And I think to me, Dartmoor represents exactly that tension.
Dartmoor, a radical landscape, starts in 1969. Nancy Holt and Robert Smithson came to Dartmoor. Artists were making work from the other side of the world, inspired by this place. Just got me thinking about what an important and special place it was to artists since then, and artists who continue to make work, particularly in photography, living on Dartmoor now.
We're really pleased to be partnering with the RAMM on this particular exhibition. There is a vibrant contemporary culture in Dartmoor. We're very keen to be involved with partners in addressing the climate emergency and on maintaining Dartmoor as a wilderness for everybody, because there's so much out there and it's really important both now and to the future of Dartmoor.
We're able to invite artists in to be inspired by the collections. We've invited Alex Hartley and Ashish Ghadiali to be inspired to create new work.
I think the magic of Dartmoor for me is the way it hasn't been overwritten. You can reach back 4,000, 5,000 years. Its uniqueness for me is that bit that you can connect to all the other people, and that connection with the land is very visceral somehow. You're in it and connected to it. And that's a real magic to me. The commission piece work that I'm making for the show is called The Summoning Stones. It comes from this idea about trying to hold this vibrant energy that is in the stone circles. I spent my whole life trying to make these sculptures that have this power, and I know by now it is really hard. And there is in RAMM this object, it's a totem object. I don't really understand the history of it, but you look at it and you know it holds that scary magic power. So I thought I would try and make a work that dealt with that power. I've taken these photographs of these stones and I've inserted the photographs into solar PV panels. I've embedded them in resin, and the solar panels are a vehicle for us harnessing the power of the sun. And then I floated the rocks in the cosmos, and then you stand in the arc, you're the focus of it. I'm trying to make a discussion between these powerful rocks and us as the small human. That's the attempt. I sense an energy here when I'm here. That's exciting and interesting. It's amazing that we don't know what the purpose or why these were built, but we do know that they are about gathering, and that idea that I'm drawn here for that reason. And those moments when people do come to gather are incredible. That's why some of these rocks are in the work that I'm making for RAMM.
What I have is the kind of great human moment when a group of people enabled photography to come into existence, which enabled us to make an image appear and become permanent on a surface, and a camera became a tool like a chisel. Photography is the way light can be held on a surface, and I've explored ways to work directly with light in that way and with the materials of photography. I've developed my work looking at exposure as the life force, I suppose. For me, it's made me the person I am, and it allows pictures to exist. So the exposures that come out of the darkroom are manifestations of things that I've seen or felt within the landscape I live in, which for the last 30 plus years has been Dartmoor, and all the work I've made comes from a circle that surrounds my home. In the exhibition, there's a plant piece, Breathing in the Beechwood, which is in the collection of the V&A, from a beech tree in this wood. Then there's the Year One cabinet. There is one picture from each month. In the exhibition, there are 3 or 4 months represented by one of the pictures made in that month. The final work in the exhibition, which the museum has acquired, is the Darkroom's Fading Presence from 2020. And this is in the final 2 years of my darkroom functioning. I've got the last supplies of the materials. They're past their life cycle, the point when they could still be used. And so there's a margin of unpredictability and a sense of where does the image exist and where is it right and how much can I influence it. And so that picture comes from that year of 2020, and it was a challenging time, but it was also quite a wonderful time because there was some other presence out of my control influencing the pictures, and so they began to appear in ways that I wouldn't have imagined. There was a group of yellow discs of light which seemed to have a presence and a life of their own. and I was a kind of agent within making them visible. I would never have been given the chance to work in this way, but for the end of my materials, I feel a lot of affection towards these pictures.
Kind of astounds me every time I see it, every time I experience it, that this body of water has been flowing for hundreds of thousands of years. And the installation really is an attempt to bring cinematic form to that research. The project is called Cinematics of Gaia and Magic, and it references conversations that I had with the Gaia theorist James Lovelock. In search of these questions around the planet, there was an opportunity to sort of speak with this great theorist of our planetary existence, the idea of the Earth as a single unified system. The phrase that's kept coming up through the work itself is a question: can you tell the time of a running river? What has the archive got to tell us about the way that Dartmoor has been experienced in the past, connecting more deeply with the region? There was something about the experience of digging into the archive and looking at those magic lantern slides that connected me with a sense that something that I was feeling in the landscape now was also what others had felt before me. So there'll be two screens. On one is literally raw digital footage of a stretch of the river. During that, a very low-key performance in which I go for a swim on a very cold day. I guess there's an opportunity there to reflect on those different temporalities, the time of a river and the time of a human body. That's the kind of main image. And then on the side, there'll be kind of montage that is of the Magic Lantern slides. I guess I was just really intrigued by the way that this new technology emerges at the turn of the century, and what actually we're seeing, these Edwardian men got the newest technology and they're looking for the standing stones and the tors and the fast flowing water of the rivers of Dartmoor. And somehow that experience felt very emotional to me. It kind of clarified the way in which maybe we are all seeking connection with the life of the planet.
So I'll be exhibiting a body of work which is all about the small section of temperate rainforest that exists really close to my house. And I've been walking there for the last 12 years, being absolutely mesmerised by the space. I've just spent a lot of time in that woodland, and I notice every time I step inside it, my heart rate lowers and my mind clears, and I feel really connected to this beautiful space. And so I've been collecting images in this woodland for over a decade, and the work that I'm exhibiting is part of that body of work, which invites people to think about these tiny pieces of landscape that desperately need looking after and protecting at all costs, because they are carbon sinks and they are places where nature kind of exists undisturbed. The work I'm making there is printed on this beautiful Japanese paper, which is very translucent, and the work is dipped in wax using natural materials and natural pigments to make the work. Over the last few months, we've been working on a project called Dartmoor Frame of Mind, which is in collaboration with RAMM and the Youth Arts for Health Trust and myself, and we're taking people out walking on Dartmoor with their cameras. It's been an ongoing photography project where we're encouraging young people to go out and take pictures of this amazing landscape. What's been amazing about this experience is seeing them all, knowing nothing about photography, to having these fantastic photographs that they were taking out on the moor. They've been doing a great job with their cameras.
Two of the works that I made, they've been acquired by the V&A, and there is a third print which is acquired by RAMM. Eden 4, 5 and 6, which haven't been seen together but were made at one moment, one evening in the River Tor in a valley called Skye Valley. And it was a kind of exceptional piece of work in many ways, because I made it with the team of the Eden Project, and they were designing this building on the metaphor of a forest canopy with a huge central stem. And I was asked to deal with an area that was called the clear story. And I decided, in keeping with the metaphor of the forest canopy, that I would deal again with water, because the forest canopy is really so much about transpiration of water from the earth up into the sky that is very visible on Dartmoor in terms of the sort of cycling through the high ground, down into the valleys, down to the oceans and evaporation, and back up into the sky. I think I'd like the bringing together of those three pieces to communicate and actually embody the complexity and energy and living qualities of a body of water.
The thing that inspires me about Dartmoor is this sense of place that other artists have been drawn to as well. In a similar way, I'm drawing on that tradition with a lot of my work. People being in the landscape, inhabiting them more, that really interests me, how people interact with this space, where I feel like there's a sense of freedom. It's the largest area of tranquility in the south of this country. It's unlike anywhere else I've been. You know, I'd almost say that the landscape has a presence, Dartmoor has a presence, which, you know, for me is really emotive.
It's a word and a name and a concept that I think a lot of people have opinions about, even if you don't come from the area. The idea of local community is important. I think what we're trying to say and explore is that community is a big word and can be built up even if residency is not the primary motivation. So people can form into connections and communities with landscapes without the necessity of having to live there.
Is that idea of a moral habitat and how you kind of relate relationally to a place, whether you belong to it, but also it's thinking about those ideas of right and wrong ways to be in the landscape. And I think we often place a lot of value upon certain people's engagement with the land. For example, farmers, the kind of moral guardians of heritage and traditional ways of doing things with land, you know, is really contested at the moment. And there are, you know, really difficult conversations around, you know, centuries of how things have been done and whether we should maintain that or whether we should explore different routes. And I think what we are kind of really keen to encourage is the intimacy of a friendship with land that isn't purely extractive, but it's also not purely worshipful and it's not purely utilitarian at all. It's kind of working with, being with, spending time with in a close way rather than a kind of distance way.
I know the value of this water, and that water is coming directly from Dartmoor, and sometimes that's very visible when you get the peat, that red iron colour, and you'll see it in some of my pictures, how that stains the skin tone. The big issue at the moment is pollution. We can't keep allowing cattle to feed and to reside along the river. You know, my daughter, I won't let her swim in here anymore because she has violent vomiting bouts from E. coli. The River Dart, it's just really loved and adored, and yet it's one of the most polluted rivers, I think, in this country. As I'm sitting here, I can't help but being activated by the environment.
Dartmoor is the only place in England you can legally wild camp, which makes it extremely special, and loads of people flock from all over to spend a night under the stars. Every time I walk in this landscape on Dartmoor, I see something completely new every time, even if I'm going to the same place I've been to 100 times. And I think that that's the beauty of nature and what inspires me. With our changing environmental climate, we are going to need to come together more to stand up for nature. Showing a positive form of protest, I feel, is really important. I'd like people to come away from my project feeling a sense of hope and justice, showing that when people come together, they can make change.
These wild spaces, our national parks, are so important. They are the only places that aren't overwritten, and that's so much harder in our built-up world. It's so rare to find those places. It's not many places that I have that with, where they really follow me around and they are in me. The access issues that have come up over wild camping here are massively important. If those rights are chipped away at, do we lose a bit of what it is us as being English people?
I think the thing that I'd like audiences to connect with when they look not just at my work in the exhibition, but with the work that the young people have made as well, is that being out in open spaces is important. It's important for your mental health. It's important to feel connected to the earth, think about what we need to do to protect it and look after it. And I hope that as they go away inspired to pick up their cameras and tell their own stories, and also to think about ways that they can engage sustainably with their environment and do their bit to make the world better for all of us, I suppose.
I think Dartmoor is very important along with all the national parks, because they are the keepers of things that are disappearing. It is also only as good as the people who administrate, the policy makers, the administrators, the people who live in it, the people who visit it. So it's not a fixed entity.
I enjoy seeing people in the widest Dartmoor landscape, and it can take so much and give so much back. And this show starts at a certain point and is an example of the way people have come, like Nancy Holt, kind of halfway around the world because for some reason they knew this was a place they had to come to. The exhibition is raising awareness and celebrating the fact that we can all access this place which gives so much.
I think it's really exciting to have that history being reconsidered in this moment of environmental engagement. There is an invitation here really to think about what the role of our creative lives and of the human soul is in our environmental renaissance, which kind of has to happen. We're really very lucky in Devon to have this story being told in this way with such sort of care and attention to detail.
So many elements of Dartmoor which we're trying to bring out in the exhibition. A space that is away from the city, a space of inspiration, place that can be for recreation, spaces to really think about a kind of philosophical approach to living. People will get to see Dartmoor in quite new ways. You'll see some of your favourite artists set amongst contemporary artwork, which is really investigating the climate emergency and some of the important issues of today.
Dartmoor National Park appears on the face of it to be completely empty, but in fact it's very busy and there's a lot of competing interests, there's a lot of competing views on how to use the park. Exhibitions like the one at the RAMM are really important to bring the multiplicity of views to the public, and if we don't keep educating people on that subject, there's a real risk that people's views won't be heard and Dartmoor won't be able to serve everybody.